Anika. Well, how are you this morning?
I'm okay. Yes, I am doing the best that I can after, watching myself be vulnerable on national television. So it's quite something to experience.
I can imagine. Let's go back because your tribe actually goes to the very first tribal. But we did see Andy pitch a plan for you to John. Were you aware of that?
I was aware. So we had this core four, which was Sam, Sierra, myself, and Rachel. And Sam personally did tell me immediately after Andy told him, hey, by the way, Andy's throwing your name out. What I find really interesting, though, is I asked back, why? Like, why in the world would he be throwing my name out? And the reasoning I get back is that Andy thinks I'm the weakest on the tribe. And so, which is fine. Yep. Looking back, it makes me laugh. But in that moment, though, I get so in my head about it, being like, oh my gosh, they think I'm like, if you look at us visually too, like I'm the smallest by far. So I get in my head about it and I'm like, okay, like, let me really show up my strengths. Like, let me do a lot of work around camp. Let me do my best in these challenges. And I think, I mean, watching it back, it ended up hurting me. So it's really unfortunate in those couple of moments. Yeah.
We see kind of from Sam's perspective that maybe the relationship is rocky, but from your perspective, you said a core four. You felt good with Sam?
I felt good with Sam. Yeah. And I think that me and Sam's relationship felt very brother sister out there. Like you see us run every single challenge together. We were paired up. You see us find the idol together. Every single conversation we're having, it's me and I'm supporting him while he's rapping. I'm the one asking him about the food. We talk so much out there. And what I find interesting is that the more I got to know Sam, the more I felt comfortable um and with him being someone that I wanted to collaborate and work with, like seeing his intelligence and his social skills and his strength, I was like, you are a solid alliance member that I want to work with. And what I find interesting is that the more he got to know who I was as a person and my intelligence and my social skills or who I am, the more he felt threatened. And I didn't know that because in my head, I'm thinking, hey, we are working up this relationship. Like we are strong. And even when we're having these little moments of us bickering, of course, like the first time he yells at me during the challenge and I say, listen, afterwards he apologizes to me. And I take that genuinely. And then also when we're doing the clothesline or any little moment like that, of course, immediately after I'm like, I called your name Samuel, like, Sam, oops, sorry, like, I'm hangry. And then he's like, I'm hangry too. And it's just when you hit that wall. So
Mhm. Well, congratulations to you and Rachel because it looked like putting you on a puzzle that it was over for everybody else.
I love a puzzle. I love a puzzle.
Isn't that exciting though? That because I think most of us think we're good at a puzzle, but then we go on Survivor and we're like, no, never mind. But you actually are.
I will say it is incredibly validating for the one thing that, because it's talked about, right? Like the way you think you're going to act on an island or the way you think what you're going to be good at out on the island can be totally different sometimes. And for me, I did say that I would be good at puzzles, right? But it is so validating to be able to get brand new survivor puzzles and be able to be the first ones to ever complete them. Like me and Rachel were on a high every single time. And the way we work together, our minds, it like we barely even spoke to each other during them. Like we just melded into one and just knew exactly what we were doing. It's interesting because the first puzzle that we did for the tribe equipment, we worked together so seamlessly. But those puzzle pieces were like 60 pounds each. They're so heavy. And the show obviously doesn't show, but it goes on for like 45 minutes. So in the
Mhm.
second challenge, we're like, if we get a third person, we need someone with strength. But when we put a third brain in with other two brains, that's where we got like a little bit jumbled because we didn't have the flow that we did. And then you see it in this last one where I go home. I don't get to help Rachel with the puzzle, and it took them a little bit longer.
Yeah, I imagine when you strategize, you guys were like, that seems like an easy puzzle. It's okay if I'm not there,
I
maybe.
know. I know. So I really adamantly did, I wanted to play the challenge. I did
Mm.
not want to sit out. But in that moment, Sam looked at me in the strategy when Jeff asks who's sitting out and says, we need to keep the tribe strong, Anika. Which I think is funny because I've taught Sam how to cut a rope and Andy's cutting the rope. And then also I do a puzzle. And I do believe that I could have done the coconuts. So it's so frustrating, Sarah, to have to go out on the day that I sat out on the challenge and had no control of my fate in the game. Knowing that I wanted to do it and could have probably done it. Who knows?
Right? Well, I mean, we can just say that you would have. Absolutely. You would have solved it correctly, not on the wrong side. We can just live in that universe. Yeah.
Yeah, yeah.
Well, what about the journey? I mean, you also didn't have complete control over your fate in that journey. I was surprised that you didn't have the option, right? It seemed like you guys just had to grab in that bag and go. What was that journey like for you?
Um, I just felt so unlucky in that moment, right? A little behind the scenes, Rachel was actually going to be the one on the journey, but because of what we're calling Rice Gate, which was the episode right before it, the challenge right before, she felt like she was called out in front of the whole entire cast that she was like, no, can you go instead? And so I'm like, okay, I feel safe within my alliance that if I go, I'm going to still feel solid if I lose my vote. Going on the journey, though, I'm getting frustrated because Jeff, give me a challenge, give me a puzzle, give me something
Hmm.
that I can, fail on my own with, not luck of the draw. Um, so in hindsight, I wish I'd draw again, but again, it's all in hindsight.
Yeah. I guess now that we know how many tribals you would have lost your vote for.
Yep, yep, exactly.
What was it like to chat with Kyle in Rome?
Um, it was very interesting. I found that Rome and Kyle were doing a lot of the talking, and I purposely wanted to do a lot of the listening to get other insight. As we see Kyle asking me the question of, are Sam and Sierra together? Both of them wondering, the game of Survivor Telephone kind of goes around and shoots me in the foot. I don't think very hard of it. And when I go back to camp and I tell them, I feel so strongly that I'm in an alliance with the four, and I'm warning them as a, hey, we got to watch out for you two in this group of four, not just you two, because I didn't know how strongly they felt, like working with each other. Like we knew, obviously, you could assume that they were a duo, but I do also believed, similarly to myself and Rachel, that we were a core four as well.
Hmm. So, knowing all of this about your relationships, going into this tribal, I have to imagine you were fairly comfortable.
I was still horrified at the thought of Andy playing his shot in the dark, and we've seen
Hmm.
it work successfully. So I was a little bit uh worried about that, but I was never ever thinking that Sam and Sierra were going to turn on me. And
Hmm.
and you see my reaction, it's genuine. Out of all the possible, and I thought of a lot of possibilities out there. Um but they did a really good job of making me feel comfortable for the whole entire like time that I was out there. It wasn't just in that day. It was pretty much the whole entire time. And for the most part, I do believe that Sierra was debating which way to go. I just think she didn't fight maybe hard enough as Sam for what was best for his game. Like I think he was playing a little bit harder in that case, and he gets Sierra as his almost +1 on the vote.
Hmm.
Similarly to that first tribal where John goes home, I don't think Sam ever saw John as a possible alliance member, and he really did a lot of owning of that conversation, saying, "Hey, this is what we need to do," and then getting us to agree.
So, there was never a conversation with the breadwinners that, like, is this a time to lose Sam? Like, that never came up.
There were moments where it was talked about if Andy does play his shot in the dark, or if Andy gets an idol, or if Andy, like, it was always mentioned as like a last case scenario. Obviously, we're tight. We want to stick with the strong women. We're not aiming to get Sam. Like that's where the difference is. It's not like we're targeting him. It was
Hmm.
always a case of, if some survivor magic happens, it has to be Sam's name.
Hmm.
But we were never gunning for him. No.
And we saw your very raw reaction, which is very relatable. I think a lot of us would just be like, what? And in that moment, I mean, talk me through that. I mean, it takes just two votes for you to all of a sudden panic. You're hearing Jeff say your name. You're thrown by Sierra and Sam, I assume. Yeah, talk me through that.
Yeah, so obviously, like, I knew that my name was getting thrown out from the first tribal council, so that when I see the first name, I'm not shocked. I'm like, oh, Andy's not throwing my name out. Again, not surprised. When I see that second name, I am flabbergasted. I'm shocked. I think I black out a little bit. I have no idea what's going through my head. I do not remember staring at them for so long. I have no idea what was going through my head at that time, except for maybe like, again, I have no, I just don't know. Um, But yeah, it was, you see me cry immediately afterwards. And it was really seeing like Sam's smile and how quickly he raised
Mhm.
his hand to own it. Because I really did feel differently about our relationship out there. And so that is what stung the most. Watching it back, watching what like Sierra knowing actually stings more. Knowing how solid I felt with the breadwinners, I can understand why Sam made the move or thought that. We did talk a lot out there about, you know, him being the one guy in a group of three. And I thought I did enough comforting to make sure that he felt solid because I was never planning on getting him, but I could have maybe done more.
Is there anything that really surprised you about playing Survivor once you were out there?
Um, Jeff makes a comment about how you are really going to be yourself out there. Do not try to be anyone else because you're just going to end up being yourself. And I think feeling at your actual lowest that you have ever been in your whole entire life, like actually starving, it is interesting to see like me just be me. All of my friends and family who are watching me back, they're like, "Yep, that is you, Anika, out there at your lowest, at your like when you're starving." And I'm really proud of myself for how strong I was in the challenges and mentally being at my actual lowest. I think that's what surprised me so much.
And what was your highlight from this whole experience?
The puzzles. I loved solving them. And as someone who loves Survivor and has always like dreamed of like you watch the challenges and you dream of like, can I do those puzzles? How good would I be? You know, especially when you're starving. And to be able to say that we accomplished and we were some of the first people to ever solve some of these net new Survivor puzzles, like that is the coolest thing to me.
Right?
Thank you. Thank you.
Absolutely. You should be so proud of that. I mean, you should be proud to just make it on Survivor and play. It was so lovely to talk to you today. Thank you.
Thank you so much, Sarah.